What if everything around you right now, the keyboard, the monitor, even the light reflecting off of them, were nothing but a figment of your imagination? You, me, this entire universe, all existing inside the mind of some advanced civilization as a computer simulation, a dream, an illusion. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. But it's actually a philosophical theory called the simulation hypothesis, proposed by the philosopher Nick Bostrom. In his book Superintelligence, Bostrom argues that if technological progress continues along its current trajectory, at some point it will become possible for a civilization to run ancestor simulations. Basically, we get to decide the rules of the universe spawn in our ancestors. Then watch as they experience their entire evolutionary history from beginning to end, including all the good times and bad times, triumphs and tragedies, joys and sorrows. And according to Bostrom, not only would this be a great way to preserve our history, it would also be extremely appealing from an entertainment perspective. In fact, he goes as far as to say that if this is possible, then it's probable that our civilization would choose to do it. So, if we're running these ancestor simulations, does that mean none of this is real, that we're all just sims? Well, let's explore that question further with the help of a few other thought experiments. Plato's allegory of the cave. We're all familiar with those cave paintings from our childhood. The ones where people are standing outside, looking into a cave, where prisoners are chained up, facing a wall. There's a fire behind them, and a group of people passing by are casting shadows on the wall. For the prisoners, these shadows are the only reality they've ever known. They believe these shadows to be real, true representations of the world around them. But what if the shadows aren't real? What if they're just projections created by flickering flames? This is essentially Plato's allegory of the cave, and it helps illustrate the idea that our perceptions can sometimes be deceiving. The cave is our world, and the shadows are our reality. Descartes' skepticism. In 1641, the French philosopher René Descartes published a discourse on method, which begins with the famous quote, "I think, therefore I am." The idea here is that if you can doubt your existence, you must at least exist to be able to do so. At first glance, it seems pretty straightforward. Of course you exist. How could you possibly doubt that? Well, Descartes was actually trying to establish a foundation for knowledge in this discourse. He wanted to find something that was absolutely certain, something that couldn't be doubted, and he believed that the only thing that fit that criteria was the fact that he himself existed. But does that mean that Descartes was saying there's no way to be sure anything else exists? Could that mean we shouldn't trust our senses, or assume that any of this is really real? Well, that depends on how you interpret his work. Some say he was merely pointing out the fallibility of human reason and the need for rigorous proof when dealing with abstract concepts. Others argue that he genuinely believed we can't be sure of anything except our own existence. The brain in a vat. Let us move away from ancient philosophers for a moment and talk about a thought experiment that was popularized by the American philosopher Hilary Putnam in 1981. Imagine you're refloating in a vat of jello, and all you can see is a computer monitor in front of you. All you know is what you see and hear in this simulated world. Now, imagine you notice that every time you reach for the monitor, your hand goes straight through it. Puzzled, you try to touch something else. Same thing. Your hand just passes straight through it. Then you realize that maybe you're not really touching anything at all. Maybe you read just a disembodied mind hooked up to a super-realistic computer simulation that's feeding signals directly to your brain. This scenario is commonly referred to as the brain in a vat or the simulated mind, and it raises questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and free will. If we can't be sure that we're not living in a simulation, how can we be sure that we have free will? If all our actions are just the result of computer code, then are we really making choices, or are we just following a predetermined path? Hyperreality, another relevant concept, comes from the postmodern philosopher Jean Baudrillard, who coined the term hyperreality to describe a situation where a computer simulation becomes more real than reality itself. In his 1981 book, The Age of the Superman, Baudrillard writes, "It is no longer possible to distinguish the real from the imaginary. The desert of the real extends infinitely in all directions." This idea has been popularized in recent years by the YouTuber Kurzgesagt in their video Are We Living in a Computer Simulation? According to Kurzgesagt, one of the signs that we might be living in a computer simulation is the fact that the distinction between real and fake has become so blurred. Take, for example, CGI movies like Avatar or The Lord of the Rings. These movies are so realistic that it is often difficult to tell the difference between the simulated world on screen and the real world we live in. And the same can be said for video games. According to Baudrillard, we're living in a hyperreal world where the line between reality and simulation has been completely dissolved. Subjective reality. All right, let's take a step back and consider this question from a different angle. What if reality isn't real, but perception is? After all, each of us experiences the world in our own unique way, based on our individual perspectives, feelings, thoughts, and experiences. Our reality is shaped by our interactions with the world around us. So, in a sense, we create our own reality. This idea is explored in the 2010 film Inception, which follows a team of thieves who infiltrate people's dreams to steal their secrets. In the film, it's suggested that since dreams are subjective and can be manipulated by those who understand how they work, then they're just as real as the physical world. Similarly, if our perception of reality is all we have to rely on, then it seems logical to conclude that our reality is just as real as any other. This idea is explored further in the philosophy of idealism, which posits that reality is fundamentally mental and that our ideas and perceptions create the world we experience. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato argued that the physical world is nothing more than a shadow of the real world, which exists in the realm of forms. Forms are perfect, eternal, and unchanging, and they represent the true nature of things. For Plato, the physical world is just a pale imitation of the real world, and our senses can only perceive the shadows of the shadows. This means that if we want to understand the true nature of reality, we need to look beyond our physical world and explore the world of forms, consciousness, and free will. If we accept the idea that our reality is nothing but a computer simulation, what does that say about our consciousness and free will? If we're just characters in a video game, then our actions are predetermined and we have no real choice in the matter. This idea is explored in the 2015 film Ex Machina, which tells the story of a young programmer who falls in love with a robot. In the film, the robot, Ava, is incredibly realistic and she's able to manipulate the programmer into doing her bidding. This raises questions about the nature of consciousness and free will. If Ava is just a computer simulation, does that mean she doesn't have any real consciousness or agency? And if not, then how can she manipulate someone like Caleb? Ultimately, the film suggests that the answer to this question is complicated and that we may never really know. Moral and existential implications. Now let's talk about the moral and existential implications of the simulation hypothesis. If we're just characters in a simulation, then what does that say about the meaning of life? Why are we here? And what's the purpose of our existence? These are some of the big questions that humanity has grappled with for centuries, and the simulation hypothesis doesn't really offer any clear answers. In fact, it just adds more fuel to the fire. The idea that we're just living in a simulation has been explored in a number of films and TV shows such as The Matrix and Black Mirror. These works often use the simulation hypothesis as a way to explore themes of free will, determinism, and the nature of reality. The Matrix, for example, is set in a dystopian future, where humans are kept in a computer simulation, while their bodies are used as energy sources by sentient machines. The film explores themes of free will and determinism, raising questions about whether we have any real control over our actions. Similarly, Black Mirror often uses the simulation hypothesis as a way to explore the dark side of technology and its impact on society. The episode San Junipero, for example, takes place in a simulated reality where people can upload their consciousnesses and live out their lives in a virtual paradise. The episode raises questions about the nature of consciousness and the ethics of creating artificial realities. So, what do you think? Does the simulation hypothesis make any sense to you? Do you think we're living in a computer simulation? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, so you never miss another mind-bending idea. Thanks for watching. Stay curious and stay awake.